Good evening, lords and ladies of the Unbelievability. I hope you're doing good tonight. I can't scream enough for my microphone to pick me up. As it turns out, I sound like I'm super far away from the microphone. I'm sorry, I suck at this. But anyhow, that's not really a way to start a show. So, how are you doing tonight? The garbage truck just went by, so I'm going to reopen the door. All right. So I thought I'd stream tonight because there's like a whole bunch of stuff going on. And I thought, well, I had something to gossip about all of it. So today I streamed for 3 hours on Rumble, the platform that doesn't even show that my account exists or allow for my videos to be found if you search for the entire title, that platform. And so, yeah, it tells me that I had 32 views, even though I could only see like two people during the entire thing. And I know I was one of them. Like right now, it's just me and you. So it tells me I have one person viewing, but there's also me. So yeah, I'm happy that you're there, J Rock. And cuz yeah, that's true. You don't get to see the stream that often. So can I do this? Yay. Technically, I have stuff to show every single day. Like today, I was supposed to work on my things, and gossip at the same time while I was doing some work so that you could see what happens behind the screen behind the scenes when I'm posting crazy threads on Facebook, on Twitter, because I do the research as it happens. Like I'm always looking for more information or revalidating what I did before, and I've been practicing where I do my work and I gossip into nothing, like I speak to myself about what's going on in preparation for eventually streaming every afternoon while I prepare the stream for the evening. But yeah, today I just like went off on a rant and I was telling stories, but then again, my voice was too low. So I don't know, like right now I'm hitting the yellow, so it might mean that my voice is going to be loud enough so I can hear myself when I listen to the stream later on. But anyhow, how could I have been streaming for 4 years and still be that bad at it? I don't know. But apparently it's the thing we're supposed to do. So, so J-Rock, you haven't seen yet that our new headquarters is just around the street from I Wanna Rock, right? Yeah, that's where we are now. So the unbelievability. Before I was finding a new place every time for us to gather, but it turned out to be a lot of work. Oh, great, that didn't work at all. It's supposed to be a quote. All right. I still wanted to show my fake advertisement about the new thing in Pinecliff. It's the Museum of Cryptid Natural History. I sincerely wish there was a place like this. Maybe there is. I should look this up. So it's an institute for the study, classification, and preservation of unconfirmed species. Mm. And young Harry Truman is adorable. And he is definitely the hairiest. Like I was talking about how Harry Truman is a friend of the hairy people today, but like Harry Truman is Chewbacca. But how the heck do I prove this? Right? It's technically unprovable, but as the way that I work is that I work with people's own disclosures across their whole life. And what Harry Truman did in order to be the hairiest is put a S in the middle of his name, and so that makes him hairiest. Harris Truman, right? So he's the hairiest human, the hairiest true man. He's yeah, he represents the hairy people. And so yesterday was the day of Saint John the Baptist, who's the wild man, and is sometimes depicted with, like a skin of animal on his back. And so he was a friend of the hairy people as well. So of course we don't have any hairy people anymore. We just call them Bigfoot, and we kind of pretend they don't exist or pretend they exist. It depends. They're in the cryptid category. And Harry Truman's conception was celebrated by Pope Leo the 13th. And so this is the beginning of a phase of work. It's like a bookend. And then you have Leo 14, which is the other bookend. So you can consider that in the middle of the two dates between Leo 13 and Leo 14, that it's two bookends that are lions, and that the true history of the world is disclosed in the middle in the coolest books. So today I have 5 birthdays. So Romeo Dallaire, of course, Gerard, you know who he is. He was our, what do you call it, Governor General for a while, but he was also the senator from Quebec and the Lieutenant General in the Canadian Armed Forces. So he's pretty cool. He was born at the same time as George W. Bush, by the way. And Sylvester Stallone. Sorry. So I'm doing the, like what was happening when he was born. And it was a film the Dolly sisters came out. So see, Dolly is a keyword that has to do with me. So this is interesting. And so we have John Payne. So I attribute Romeo to John Payne. Is because John Payne, well, I went through it today. Like John Payne is from Karsten Borchevik, who is an explorer, and above that there's a prime minister. So John Payne is from the presidential bloodline of the Commonwealth, if I can explain it. So that's why it's John Payne. Normally you'd have a general or a diplomat there, right? But now I've decided to attribute him to an actor. And it's because the Chin thing is not easy to, like, you have to have this in your gene pool in order to manifest it. And Romeo gets it from John, I think. So there's more interesting stuff about John Payne. He was an actor. But in the photo that you see, he's wearing a Steve outfit. So that's the checkered jacket. So Steve is usually the guy who fucks up to save the world. So there's something more about John Payne, which I still haven't explored. But eventually I'll get into it. So his twin is Bruce Davison, who is a prolific filmmaker, who's made one film called Willard or something about rats, about a boy who has rats that attack people. Like, it's a weird thing. But anyhow, we're supposed to look to Bruce Davison to tell us about the, secret missions of Romeo Dallaire. if there are any. Like the guy is in the army, so he's always doing stuff. But if there's, like an Easter egg somewhere, we have to look to Bruce Davidson. Today's the birthday of George Orwell. I urge you to look up the book Shooting an Elephant. It is way more appropriate for this moment in time than 1984. So, P.G. Woodhouse is kind of a big deal, but just because, like, he has an explorer status kind of in the business world because he was working in Hong Kong and Shanghai. He was a spy, that guy. And then he gave that up and he started writing full time and he became quite popular and successful. And then we have Beatrix Potter. So Beatrix Potter, I have her as being one of the children born after the second Universal Exhibition, I think. It was the one from 65. The first one was in 51. Well, anyhow, we'll go through. On July 28th, I'll tell you about Beatrix Potter. That's what I have. Writers from writers, nerds from nerds. So now I have Anthony Bourdain. Oh, I was supposed to add stuff for Anthony Bourdain because he has a twin. Or is it gonna show up? Hello, hello. No, this is event. Yeah, Thomas Brownrigg founded ITV, the first independent commercial television in the UK, and that was like after like a day after Queen Elizabeth changed the law for him. There he is. This man is the twin of Cecil B. DeMille, who is the first director of The Ghost Army. So that's why the Ghost Army book by Elizabeth Sales, the first chapter is the Cecil B. DeMille soldiers. So Thomas Marcus Brownrigg is like a counterpart of Cecil B. DeMille, but in the UK. And his job was to create vehicles or have ways to have a lot of TV shows. And it only took a few years before the Queen got her soap opera on ITV that, like she could use in order to communicate with her family, and that was Coronation Street. So TV shows like Coronation Street are super duper important. They're more important in shaping the views of the public than the news anchors. Of course, soap operas were a big thing, and up until the 2000, and then after that, since then it's been the politicians that are cast in soap opera like stories, and they're used by the media in order to as like unpaid actors basically. So Anthony Bourdain, his predecessor in the MI6 is Julia Child. So the traveling food enthusiast like a naturally fun bon vivant who travels the world to sit down with locals and chat. And this is what Anthony Bourdain did across two series that he produced. And so he and his crew would go, and I figured out eventually, because when I was watching this, I was like, oh my God, the people he's talking to and the places he's going are a little bit strategic. He's always talking to the right person. And to the average person, it doesn't seem like that person is well known. But all of the people that Anthony Bourdain was talking to in his shows and all the places he was visiting were very, very strategic. And the story of the murder of Anthony Bourdain is actually told through his show. If you want to hear two guys gossip about killing Anthony Bourdain, including the last guy who saw him alive, you have to tune into an episode where they're in Austria. I don't know if they went visiting like the knife factory or a watch place. I don't remember, but it's in that show. Just watch it again. You'll hear it. So of course, all of that is a pantomime, but anyhow. So the twin of Anthony Bourdain, who was born a day away from him, is Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is from Cecil B. DeMille, and Anthony Bourdain is from Thomas Marcus Brownrigg, who was in the army before. He's a businessman in communications, but his previous career was in the army, in the British Army. So for a mom, I have Antigone Costanda, who's actually Miss Egypt. And she was the first Miss World from Egypt. I could go up a generation for her, but I don't have a good birthday for her for now. So 2018 is when he passed away. I remember this because I was already following the people who are around him with an I was side eyeing all of these people, by the way, because I was at that time I was very specifically doing research about the weird restaurants in Washington D.C. So I'd already come across, like Anthony Bourdain's friends, and I was looking into this. So we have Ricky Gervais. I'm gonna have to fix this photo because now I have a double photo, but I think it's kind of cute. I like his picture when he was a teenager. It looks so 80s. It's great. So unfortunately, I don't have an event. From some strange reason, it's not showing up. But our friend is from Buffalo Bob Smith. So the very last episode of Howdy Doody is the conception notification of our friend Ricky Gervais. And that immediately puts him in the puppet group. The puppet group is Team America, World Police. So all of the silly puppet shows, all the guys who have puppets, they're all in that group. And they have a certain culture for communication. And it's silly and fun. It's kind of over the top as well. So nobody suspects that, like the private army of Ricky Gervais and his twin is Team America World Police, right? But of course, it's like more like the people who are represented in the movie. What you have Ben Affleck, no, you have Matt Damon, you have Alec Baldwin, people like that. Like the characters in that show as well. And it's got Kim Jong Un, no, Kim Jong Il as well. So it's about the anyhow. You remember Team America World Police? It's completely over the top. But what I wanted to say is that Ricky Gervais' twin still communicates to her team using puppets. And Ricky Gervais' twin is Princess Diana. And Ricky Gervais was the producer of Extras. And so he's like a casting director for Extras, like literally. And this is a program that has to do with MI5 and the CIA and the Army in Canada, where they organize parties. And then they staff these parties with a whole bunch of young people who are really beautiful, and their job is just to listen. So, so, so one mark will be invited to a party, and then they don't know that every single person at that party is a soldier, and that their job is to listen and goad the guest into revealing themselves, talking about their ideas, bragging about their crimes, doing shit like that. And then often, like, something terrible happens at one of these parties, like somebody falls and hits their head and dies or whatever. And then everybody panics, and then the police shows up, but it's not the real police. You know, like it's just like in the movies. And so these are various pantomimes that actors put on in the style of the game. So I sincerely hope that you watch the 1998 movie The Game with Michael Douglas and Sean Penn, where Michael Douglas is taken on a ride by actors. And this is very emblematic of what a group of actors can do to one person in order to goad them into, well, I'm not going to tell you how the movie ends. You'll have to see it. But please consider how much. See, people love Ricky Gervais, and they think Ricky Gervais is on their side. They think Ricky Gervais is talking against the cabal, whereas every single person that's in that famous video where Ricky Gervais is saying, "Oh, we're all going to die soon," they're all working with him. They're all working together. So the day that Ricky Gervais said, "Oh, it's okay, we're all going to die soon anyway." So this was a preparation for an after party, and all of the celebrities that were acting as if, they were surprised about what he was saying, like I don't know, Tom Hanks, Brad Pitt, people like that. They all had a special guest coming with them to the after party. And this is that person is the person they're babysitting, and they're trying to convince to change, to do something drastic, let's just say. And the goal is, like, it's not mean. Everybody in this process is acting like they're the greatest person, the best friend ever, and they only have solutions to suggest, and the idea is that on a cycle, certain people find out that soon we're all gonna die. And the cycle that Ricky Gervais and Lady Diana work on is the comet that destroyed us all in June of 2023. So there's like a whole bunch of people who convinced who went through a whole bunch of hoops in order to be saved from the comet that hit us in June 2023, because we're all dead now. And so these people are in a bunker somewhere and they don't know they've been arrested. That's the story. So Princess Diana is associated to every single step of the monumental psyop, which is called Deep Impact. And it was announced in two films in 1998, Armageddon and Deep Impact, obviously. And this is 25 years exactly before 2023, when all the people that signed up, because there's multiple camps, because there's many countries working on this thing. So there's a camp in Australia, there's stuff in the US, probably in Canada and France and the UK. And but then probably not in the UK. Like the UK people, they can go to Australia. But there's a place in Australia called the Prince Regent's Reserve. So this is all people who pledged their fidelity to Prince Charles before he was made king. But they were all arrested. They were all, well, they don't know they've been arrested. They live in a safety camp or in a bunker, and they think the world has been destroyed and has devolved into a civil war and a zombie apocalypse. I know it's unbelievable, but the people who are going through the psyop and believing these storylines, they're standing next to the biggest celebrities ever, and the biggest celebrities are going, "Yeah, yeah, Obama told me this is what's going to happen. I believe him. Do you want to meet him? He's going to tell you the same thing." So, so this is all like a pantomime that is executed by people who have the highest authority in the world or the most famous people in the world. So everybody believes the celebrities. And so what I can't wait, because it's End Them All, and them all, and them all beyond, that is filming this. And I want to see the film. I sincerely want to see the film. I hope that the product of this isn't just for beyond. You know, I hope it's for us as well. Because as soon as we see a video of the enemy of humanity socializing with celebrities or talking amongst themselves in a Big Brother style production, we're totally going to understand what is the difference between humans and inhumane people. See, there's a huge difference. And it's not because they're pedos. No, they're way more evil than that. So the people who are predicted to ruin the future again and again and again and again, they've been diverted into a situation away from us and away from the future. And I just can't wait for us to meet them, Big Brother style. So now I have Henry Hap Arnold. So he's the founder of the U.S. Air Force, and before that, he started his career as an air scout, like he was a pioneering aviator, but he was filmed in Hollywood. They would make him do aerial stunts in movies. So obviously, like these were 10-minute films, so it was like just like a quick trick, and it would include the actors of the film or whatever, and so that's what he did for a while. So he was very popular in Hollywood. So his Okay, so you have to understand that Henry Hap Arnold is exceedingly precious. He was exceedingly precious in his previous life as well. He used to be my commanding officer in his previous life, and he was the secret son of Queen Victoria. So what happened is, and you're going to see a reference to this in the next thing. So that's why I wanted to to preface this and say that Hap Arnold is the sort of person who is brought back from a clergyman, and but his conception was celebrated by P.T. Barnum, who was his father in his previous life. So this is complicated, but P.T. Barnum. Okay, so let's start here. Queen Victoria had a son. His name was Charles. She placed him with a family she liked. But then, when he was like 1 or 2 years old, like he hadn't grown. By the time he was 4 years old, Queen Victoria was freaking the fuck out because Charles still looked like a baby. And so she took the child back from his family. That's her son. She can do that. She's the queen. She can do whatever the fuck she wants. And so she took Charles Stratton back and she gave him to her brother-in-law, P.T. Barnum. So P.T. Barnum had a lot of experience dealing with people who are freaks, basically. So obviously Charles Stratton had dwarfism. Like at that time, people didn't know that much about dwarfism. But what was weird about Charles is that he didn't seem like a person who had dwarfism. He just looked like a little kid. So he used that to his advantage his entire life. And he passed away when he was 46 or 47. But he played a 10-year-old kid. Well, not when he was in private, like in court, but when he was out and about, he was playing a kid. So so I had to pretend he was my child when I was working with him. So what happened is that Queen Victoria, I'm going to show you afterwards. So let's start with this one. So on September 8th, St. Thomas Academy was founded in Minnesota. And this is John Ireland, Bishop John Ireland, who founded this academy. And then a few days, like a week later, ta-da! Okay, so this is P.T. Barnum had a train accident in St. Thomas, Ontario. And that killed his big elephant, Jumbo. Now, Jumbo was purchased from the London Zoo on February 2, 1882. And this was the day that P.T. Barnum started an operation for 2 years. So this is when I was introduced and I started working with his son, Charles Stratton. And I was working with P.T. Barnum. And the story is sort of alluded to in the film Moulin Rouge. And there's a whole bunch of references in there. But Charles Stratton died in 92, in 1882 or 83. So he died in 1883. So I worked with him just before he passed. And so that's when Queen Victoria gave P.T. Barnum the permission to buy Jumbo the elephant, and Jumbo the elephant was featured in big pantomimes. And in fact, on February 3, 1882, there was an astoundingly huge pantomime in London, which is impossible to believe. And all I have is the advertisement for it. And it's sort of the thing at the end of Moulin Rouge, there's this like unbelievable big show that makes no sense and all that stuff. And it's that, basically. And I remember this. And I always thought, like, this was the proof that my memories were wrong before. The pantomime. The Blue Beard show from 1882. And I'm thinking, no, this is not possible. You could not have that many horses, that many dogs, that many whatever in a show. That doesn't work. So that's why I thought, oh, this was probably it's like a weird memory, but it's probably not true. And then I pick up the newspaper. So I'm going to look, at least I'm going to look in the newspaper just to see if they talk about this because I know the date. And I found it. I found the advertisement for this show. And it is exactly like I remembered. And it is still unbelievable, still impossible. So one day I'll do a thing where I show you like how I've done the math of this show. It makes no sense. But it happened. It was a show that happened twice a day for a while in London. Well, at least in 1882. So I have John Ireland here, who was born on September 11, 1838. So he was the first Archbishop of St. Paul in Missouri or Minnesota, Missouri. I don't remember. I already don't remember. So that's what it looks like. You know, back in the day, if people took a picture and it was like kind of weird, they couldn't know in order to take another one, you know, because that picture was taken probably in 1855 or something. And so I've credited myself with the conception of my old boss because why not? But in reality, I'm not sure. Um, I would have to rework everybody's schedule. Everybody loved Charles. Everybody adored Charles. Charles used to get up on the bench of Queen Victoria's piano and he'd play piano with his penis. Now, you've seen Volodymyr Zelensky do this, right? He's referencing Charles. That's a Charles trick. So he redid the joke. But this is the sort of shit that Charles Stratton got up to in private, in court. He did a whole bunch of really fun stuff. He was the most inappropriate person I ever worked with in that lifetime. But he had the greatest stories. So we have Princess Velma. Oh, yeah. The reason why I tend to prefer thyself is that you don't see it here, but it carries the chin thing. And you can see, like, the painting on the left that I made, it's not a painting, it's an AI rendering. It doesn't really show well his little chin dot because that's a Henry Halleck reference, and Henry Halleck is the father of Princess Velma. So because it's the same role, you know, like the permissions pass on. I don't know why it's giving me a whole bunch of pages. Okay, I'll just do this. Now I have events. I published today the Benjamin Franklin's advice to a young man on the choice of a mistress. Thank you, the person who sent this to me. And so, yeah, and I realized that this is an event, so it's not going to show up on my side, so I'm going to have to make a link to it. I'm sorry, I didn't. So, because it's Benjamin Franklin, like, I want to come back to what his role is. He was the first postmaster of the United States. Before that, he was working with John Adams in France. They were doing this good cop, bad cop thing. And they were visiting, well, it's mostly Benjamin Franklin was visiting all the brothels. And in the brothels, you find the ladies who know the gossip about all the people. So basically, what John Adams and Benjamin Franklin were doing is that they were, you know, cataloging people who needed to be distracted away from their life, you know, and they were feeding this to a group in Paris, a group of ladies, and these ladies founded the Journal des Dames, which was a magazine that encouraged women to send in letters and write articles, which had never happened before. And eventually, like the magazine was purchased by Catherine Michel de Maisonneuve around 1765, when she received a pension from the King of the Netherlands, or the King of Orange. And she was working with Dionysius Godfriedus van der Kiesel, who was a jurist in The Hague. And together they went to see the people who were on the list. And they were carrying the permission of um, Empress Teresa, basically, of who was the Empress of the Roman Empire at the time. And the people who were being stressed out, were in the old places like in Transylvania, in Romania, and Austria. And these were the people who were being visited. And then they were told everything that we knew about them. So just tell them everything we know about them. And they freaked the fuck out. But anyhow, they were told that everything in our power, or because I was there, it's like everything, we do everything in our power to help you uh, solve all the problems in your family. So this is how, like 100 years later, Queen Victoria winds up inviting a whole bunch of people to London, and then they vanish and are never heard of again, because the families that we contacted in the old states, in the old world, they were just too happy to give us the names, or and encourage their family members who were awful to go and get themselves arrested. As long as nobody found out about it, everybody was quite happy to help out. So in 1891, Arthur Conan Doyle's detective Sherlock Holmes appeared in the Strand magazine. This is available online. I didn't publish it, but it's available in Gutenberg. And this was definitely the favorite serial of Queen Victoria. She was absolutely obsessed with the idea of forensic science and detective stories, because that was completely new at the time. And Queen Victoria had a huge crush on, wait a second, why did I forget his name? But anyhow, she had a huge crush on a scientist, Francis Galton, who was the very first forensic scientist. And Francis Galton has a reputation as a eugenist, but in reality, it was Queen Victoria that was never off. Like, I was always asking him questions about this. And of course, she was kind of upset because, like, one of her children had dwarfism, but in a way that we didn't understand. Like, it's like Charles, he had dwarfism, but it was like weird dwarfism because he just looked like a kid, right? He never grew up. So, yeah, so there's various stories that actually reference Charles Stratton. Look him up. So Charlie's Angels is with him. The boy who never grew up, that's him. And so there's the guy with the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory also. That has to do with him. That's the story from him. So there's a lot of stuff that we take for granted that we don't know comes from Charles Stratton, the guy who still looked like a 10-year-old when he was in his 40s. And it would be super hilarious to remake Charlie's Angels, but then have Charlie be one of the characters, but nobody knows it's him. Right? So we're never supposed to see Charlie in Charlie's Angels. But it would be a hoot if we could see Charlie, because Charlie is the most interesting person in Charlie's Angels. So anyhow, that's about, Arthur Conan Doyle's detective, Sherlock Holmes, who was Queen Victoria's, like, favorite writer. This is weird because I remember 1891 being the first time the Sherlock Holmes came out, but I remember it as being from January 23, which is really, really, really weird. So it's like the past has changed, but I don't have any proof of this. But I distinctly remember this coming out in January. And maybe it's because Queen Victoria got it like early, 6 months early. I don't know. But this is what Queen Victoria was talking in January of 1891, not in June. So, anyhow, yeah. So, 78 years ago is when Golda Meir was named Israel's representative to the Soviet Union. Golda Meir, Golda Meir. I've already told you that the word me means permission. If we go back all the way to Mesopotamia, and so Golda Meir has me's, she has the permission. She's a permission person. And so she was permissioned by the Soviet Union, she was permissioned by Israel, and she was permissioned by the United States because she lived in the United States for a while. That's where she got married to Mr. Meyer, who is also a mirror. Mirror, mirror, mirror. See, it's all the same thing. Even Maher is a mirror. So the Myers are people who hold permissions, and we don't necessarily see what they hold permission for in their face, but you can just look at what they get appointed to, because this is something that, like, Golda Meir was named representative to the Soviet Union. So it's an election. So it means that she was, encouraged into this. So Golda has 2 feet, but like she has 3 feet. But anyhow, like there's a bridge, right? There's a bridge, and it starts in the old world. It it stops in Israel because Israel is, I'll tell you after that. And then it ends either in the United States, in the UK, or in Canada. And this is where terrible people go and get themselves arrested. And so Golda has a foot in the Soviet Union, the old Soviet states. She has a foot in Israel, and she has a foot in the United States around Colorado. And that's because of her community work, actually. She was born in Kiev, by the way, or Kiev in the Ukraine, which is one of the old world states. And so that's why she's a regular, like she's from the Soviet Union to a certain extent. She lived a lot in the US, and then she lived in Israel. So she's like the most international mirror we have. Maybe eventually I'll do like Golda Meir's actual real dad. Her dad is the king of the circus until 1955. So Golda Meir has an astonishing amount of permission, and it always goes back to, who? Edmund Halley, the guy who discovered the comet, P1, that guy. So, like, that's the permissions come from the comet. It's hard to explain, but I'll explain it one day. But, like the people who are born when comets are passing by Earth somehow wind up with more permissions than everybody else. I know it's a weird concept, but yeah. So now I'm trying to go to the next thing. Oh, there it is. Now we do the doppelgangers. So you're telling me that Ricky is same vein as Alex Jones? Kind of. Ricky Gervais is, yeah. All right. It's weird that I have 542 instances of me going, Oh, this is the same person. This got to be the same person. These people were never seen in the same room at the same time, and they conveniently have lives that do not intersect. This is the same person. And I've come to this conclusion 542 times. All right, Oscar, the perfect man. Oscar I, King of Sweden, son of Désiré Clary, was conceived when the poem Kubla Khan came out, Samuel Coleridge's poem, and that's the one that mentions Xanadu in it. It's the first mention in art. And Oscar is cool because Oscar is like is Désiré Clary's perfect man. Uh, Today we call the statuette the Oscar, right? He's a man of gold. So that's kind of like an inside joke. So next to him, we have the twin. That's David Douglas. Now, the Douglas fir is named after him. So we get a Christmas tree. So luckily for him, David Douglas got to be the bon vivant, man about town, explorer, and he seems to have a wonderful life because he was a botanist who gardened. This is like the botanist, the gardener, the person who works in a botanical garden. This is like an I consider it an ideal job. It's like perhaps one of the like if you're keeping you're a zookeeper, and you're trying to preserve animals and stuff like that. Those are the most fun jobs for people who are otherwise part of a cast, because everybody who is in this group is part of a cast. But David Douglas, he gets to roam the world, whereas Oscar has to be the king, which is it's not as interesting. Like pro tip, if you want to be born in a twin set with a royal in the future, don't be the royal. You want to be the not royal guy. But what that does allow though is for Oscar one to travel as he sees fit under the identity of David Douglas. This is why it's important to have a trading places situation where we have two people who can play the king and the guy who looks like him. Is very important. I have Olympia Dukakis and Jacqueline Scott. They were born within 5 days of each other in 31, and they're both actresses. Oh, wait. Oh no, I have the song. But I can't play the song because when I play songs, like it creates this problem with my audio. But this is exactly when I'm supposed to bring out the song Two Blondes. Sing it in your head. All right. So I was looking at this earlier before, and then my head exploded. But on the left hand side, we have test pilot, record holder, astronaut, James V. Sullivan. On the right, we have Baron Woolman. All right, so he was a photographer for the Rolling Stone. Rolling Stone magazine is important. It's like one of those magazines that always had newsworthy stuff in it. Now, the thing with Baron is that his name is Baron. But what is weird is that Baron Trump's dad's favorite project was remaking the Woolman rink. So I'm going to have to look into this, but take a moment to compare Baron Woolman to Baron Trump. and you're gonna have the impression that you're watching a time traveler. Of course, Baron is only 20, so like he's the ideal date to compare someone. So I would have to find a picture of Baron Woolman when he was 20 years old and then compare them. But this is interesting because there's a double name collision with the Trump family in this one. And maybe the third thing is that everybody in Trump's family is from an astronaut. So this is the other concordance. So I've just found a potential time traveler here. So doppelganger, 4 of 9. We have two women who look exactly the same, and they are both princesses, and they were born on the same day, and this isn't even rare, so I'm just going to go on. So the we also have born, I think it's today or yesterday, we have Meryl Streep, Lindsay Wagner, who's the Bionic Woman, Elizabeth Warren, and Phyllis George, all born within 3 days of each other. So it's kind of hard to tell which one goes with which. So I put Elizabeth Warren with Phyllis George and the two actresses together. Although I think it might be Phyllis George and Lizzie Wagner and Elizabeth Warren with Meryl Streep because of their function. But you can compare pictures of them. They all look the same. And Elizabeth Warren is an economist who ran for president very briefly. And Phyllis George is the first woman to become a sports reporter. And this was rather exceptional at the time. And also, she was a Miss America. So that's very important. These two people have a strong link to the presidential bloodline. So it's. I don't think Phyllis George ever ran for office, or I don't know if she was a first lady or something. I should look it up. But that's the place that they live in. They're always associated to politics. Oh, by the way, Donald Trump calls Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. So he makes fun of her. And this is only supposed to happen in the context of sibling rivalry. So Elizabeth Warren and Donald Trump have a family link between them, but I haven't found it yet. What I do find is that the picture of Elizabeth Warren that we see right now in this picture, she kind of looks like Ivanka. So either Elizabeth Warren has a strong family link to Donald Trump or to Ivana Trump. So I haven't found this. I don't have a chart. I don't have that many charts yet, but I do have all the links somewhere. So here we have two guys who were born at the same time. And one of them is Leon Myers, and the other one is Buddy Roosevelt. So Buddy Roosevelt was a stuntman and an actor. He's not, like a direct descendant of the Roosevelt families. He was just like tangentially associated to them. The guy on the left is Zion Myers, and he has a very strategic name. Not because of Zion or Zion or whatever, but because of Myers. So it is absolutely certain that this guy is at the center of some sort of weird thing that happened in the past because of his name. Like when a is it raining? Whoops. Got to take off the cushion from the stuff. All right, so because it's raining now, it's gonna be so cool tonight. Woohoo! All right, so Zion Myers, mark my words, this guy must have some sort of weird thing because his name, he has a double honeypot name, and that's what I would look at next. So this is why it seems like I find stuff easily, is because I notice these things. But I can't remember everything. I'm just showing you doppelgangers, which are two guys who were born in the same day who kind of look alike. So if I look at the three things that are listed, what that he wrote, here come the waves. So the waves are a group of volunteer of women who are volunteers during the war. That's the waves. The women in active volunteering efforts, something like that. Anyway, it's called Waves. Just look it up. Waves of World War II. So this could have something to do with that because the waves are all the women that are working on military projects that nobody sees because they're women. In the last project that they did, people saw them because they called the waves the dancing nurses. So I'm telling you this. I'm not going to go into details, but there are an astoundingly huge number of women who are doing voluntary service for the United States Army in the Comfort and Mercy Project, so associated to the two ships. And nobody can see them because they're women. So they can execute absolutely astonishing work together. So a lot of the crazy women in protests as well are waves. So now we have Antoine de Saint-Exupéry and Lord Mountbatten. So this is interesting because see John Denver this week he wrote on his parody account. What if John Denver never died and was still writing quips on Twitter? Like ha 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 ha. We already know that. So Antoine de Saint-Exupéry also famously disappeared on a plane, and he's the guy who wrote The Little Prince. So John Denver was born 9 months after Antoine de Saint-Exupéry published The Little Prince, and the Queen mandated a conception between him and Marianne McLeod because it was the celebration of their engagement in like 44 or something, 43, something like that. That's when Marianne McLeod and Fred Christ Trump were brought together, and they were and they were match made to be married by the British royal family, basically. And there's a whole story around this. But Antoine de Saint-Exupéry disappeared when he was on a plane, and then his son John Denver also. So all the people who vanish, have a plane crash or whatever, like JFK Jr., they're all in the same group, and they are really like at the top of the management people for the wind, which is the thing that was founded by Henry Hap Arnold, and it comes from the Air Force. And this is the witness protection program for all the celebrities who die, basically, because they're not dead, right? They're working beyond, they're working on something else. And sometimes they come back. We have a lot of people who will die, they go away for 2 years, then they come back and they play another role. And nobody notices because nobody pays attention and nobody remembers what happened 48 hours ago. So nobody needs to hide. So, what I find absolutely heartbreaking about Antoine de Saint Exupéry is that he wrote The Little Prince, which is a story of a boy who's like all by himself on a planet. This is basically the this is basically the life of the being that we know as Donald Trump. He's the loneliest guy in the universe. He works from a place where he's all by himself. And sometimes he has animals to talk to. But this is like the weirdest thing about the universe is that we exist in a series of abstractions. Like we call those dimensions. You know, we're in 3D, 4D is our dream space, 2D is social media, you know, like 5D is where we come from, 6D 5D and 6D is where we come from. We have a higher self who lives there and is, you know, like using this experience that we're having in order to get better at something, at a whole bunch of things, probably. And then between 7 and 10D is where all the conflict lives. And then in 11D is the cherubims, right? It's the beings that have the the bull, the lion, the eagle, and the man. You know, like this is this person. And then before that, we just have the guy on a horse, which is the first guy of creation. He's a guy on a white horse. He has nothing to do. But he's being pestered by an eagle, a bull, and there's also a lion there, which makes no sense, but that's what he's got. So that's why, you know, like in the next abstraction, we have a merging of all of these beings into something new, and from this spawns all the angels, all the cherubims, all the archangels, and all that stuff. And so the reason why we're stuck with Donald Trump is that he's exceedingly well connected to this original being of creation, the little prince, all stuck by himself on a planet, well, you know, in the desert, and he has nothing to do but to think about how to help us. So the trick is that if I walk up to, I am family of Christ, I am like, what, second niece of Donald Trump. I'm in the same family as him. And so the if I walk up to somebody and I say, I know you're from 8D, you know, and you're all fucked up because you are a freak made by the miners who used to have the lease for this realm, you know, like 26,000 years ago. Who are you, you know? Would you like to join my family, the family of Christ? Well, that person can, through us, join our family because we are interior, technically, to them, right? So people who come from 11D, 12D, 11D, 10D, you know, like they precede in existence, the people who are 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Anyhow, we're not in two, we're not in one yet, but some people are gonna go there. And so that's why that's the trick. That's the trick of having a family that's infused with the energy, with Kenergy, basically. This it's a joke, but it's what it is the energy of the original guy on a horse of creation. And some people will say, "Well, that's the devil," because of course you have Christians who call everything they don't understand the devil. But anyhow, it doesn't really matter because it works. It works very well. Like all the people who aren't stupid like us, they know who he is. And it's very important that who it actually is not become public knowledge because it just, like screw people over. Like it's like they'd be fucked up if they thought about this too much. So that's why people are separated in two camps. You know, you've got and the people who love Donald Trump are the camp that doesn't need as much babysitting. It's the people who hate him who need more babysitting. They're stuck in a cage in Trump derangement syndrome because they need to be managed. These are dangerous people. They have terrible ideas. So that's why they've been put into the left where they can be absolutely certain that they are superior and better than Trump supporters. And they just live in this powerful ignorance where they haven't learned anything new in the last 10 years aside from they're superior. See, they're the biggest supremacists. So these people need to be kept in a pen. The people on the right, they don't need to be managed. They're the kind of people who take care of themselves. Let them be. It's the people on the left that need to be managed. Anyhow, Antoine de Saint Exupéry and Lord Mountbatten were born at the same time, and they're a bridge of information. The thing that Donald Trump is itching to disclose is not his origin as the first being of creation. It is the actual, true, real work of Antoine de Saint Exupéry and Amelia Earhart. This is the best story ever. What they were doing is amazing. And they basically made it possible for us to have a life beyond 1980. It is their investigative work that helped us survive and get a future. And so we owe them our lives, our actual lives, especially if we were born in Generation X. All of us in Generation X were born like the people who made us, they knew that the world was supposed to end in 1980. This was already known. It was seen in the future, by many people. And the army worked overtime to 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 try to stop this, and they succeeded. But in order to get there, they needed the sort of information that Antoine de Saint-Exupéry and Amelia Earhart obtained by flying over areas that had never been explored before and detecting all the slave settlements all around the world. So these were all, like enclaves of old world uh, crimes, that were going on. And it's like nobody can drive there. So like it was really hard to map these places before there were people like Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, like Amelia Earhart, like Ab Arnold, and all the people who are associated to aviation, early aviation. Yeah, that's what I had to say about this. It was unbelievable enough. Hi, Mark. Yeah, that dude. So Antoine de Saint-Exupéry was French. His bridge is that guy. So this is the uncle of the royal family. All right. Now I just have Maureen Stapleton and June Lockhart. They were born within 4 days. So, like, we get one actress, two actresses. Nobody ever notices how they look similar. I think the lady on the left plays the silly lady, and the lady on the right plays the leading lady. So it it's kind of hard to tell sometimes when women are very, very closely related or even potentially twins because they're styled, so differently. All right, so these two, I mean, you agree with me that these two kind of look the same. So the guy on the left is Denis Arcand. He was born at the same time as my dad. He was born in Montreal. My dad was brought back to Quebec the next day. Denis on the left is from my grandmother, but my dad is not from my grandmother. So my grandmother raised the son of her half brother. And Denis went to the Arcand family, who is the originator, actually, of my grandma, weirdly enough. It's like a strange thing. And Roy, okay, so Denis and Leo were born in Montreal at the exact same time in New York. You've got Roy and Lynn. So Lynn Littman and Roy Marsden. And they're born in New York and at the exact same time, right? So there's four people. And these two look exactly the same. So what was going on when these guys were conceived is that King George VI, was giving out his honors in 1940. And it's really, really, really helpful that Roy was named Roy because that tells us he's the one that's from the king. So we can eliminate the king right away and not even consider him in the potential dads for my father. So the rest of it is like silly math, but I've kind of pretty much figured out where everybody comes from. But my dad, it's not sure 100% because there's my grandmother's is the half sister of Ronald Reagan. So it's normal that she would get a Ronald Reagan baby to raise. And when my dad was conceived, it was the celebration of the integration of all Edison power plants into General Electric. And if there's something that Ronald Reagan is known for, is being the General Electric guy, right? So this is what motivated, this is how Ronald Reagan was being worthy in at the expo in 38 to 40 in Brooklyn. And that's why my dad was reinvited to the expo in 65 or 64 actually is when he went to meet Ronald Reagan. And that's where Ronald Reagan was showing off his house, which was completely furnished by General Electric to show off all the fantastic aspects of electricity. So yeah, so that's what's interesting. And so yeah, so Denis Arcand is a prolific Quebec director, and he has done a whole lot of disclosure films. He has Jésus de Montréal. I think everybody should see Jésus de Montréal because it's very important that people see Le Terre Bluteau because Le Terre Bluteau looks exactly like Jesus. And Jesus is alive today. And you need to look at Le Terre Bluteau so that you can understand when you are looking at Jesus. So the most important of all the Jesuses that were in America. Again, this is a Utah thing. It has to do with the Mormons. It said that Jesus came to America. It's a disclosure because there is a storyline that sees Jesus being super popular in America. And so the person who was that person was very, very, very beloved is called Jesus of Montreal. And yeah, so you have to look at Le Terre Bluteau. Just look at Le Terre Bluteau. and you'll get it. And so that's Jesus of Montreal. And then that's available in English. Then you have the decline of the American Empire and its follow-up, the invasion, the barbarian invasions, right? So this has more to do with what was projected to happen in the future when the people were looking at the world just after the world didn't end. So Looking Glass from 1981, 1982, 1983, see all the people in Looking Glass get together. They discuss what they can see in the future. They consult with military planning, and they sort of write what is inevitable in the future given the new permissions that are given to humanity. So see, our freedom increases exponentially every time we don't die. So in 1980, it was like, wow, we're still alive, you know? So everything changed because at that moment, like what was being seen in the future had never happened before. So everything since 1980 is completely new society building experiments. So right now we're in the barbarian invasions, but we're also in the Great Peer Education Project, where everybody's teaching each other using the internet. And we're also in the Great Technocratic Experiment. So this is when we're moving into a more technocratic system. Nobody's talking about this. Nobody's naming these projects, right? They're just background projects that are being supported by a whole bunch of people, intellectuals. And then, you know, like people have the internet now so that they can tell everybody how they really feel about all this stuff all the time. So nobody's wondering anything. Everything is available to us. The entire real history of humanity has already been disclosed. It's already published in the popular in popular culture, in the public record, and it was all published. Like I think around maybe like 2016, 2016, maybe they stopped publishing the Book of Love, and now we're on like we timeline merged in 2017. The whole bunch of new stuff entered into our reality, and now we're doing 5-year projects, right? Because everything that's happening is new. Everything expands every time because there's always assholes that are planning to take us out. You know, like just last week it was Donald Trump's birthday, and he had a thing on the White House lawn with the UFC, and then the FBI came out and said, "Oh, by the way, somebody wanted to do a massacre at this, and we arrested them." Of course, there's always assholes who are trying to end the United States. And the weirdest part is that there's a lot of Americans who wish this would happen, which is the strangest thing ever. That there are a lot of Americans who hope that everything goes to shit in the United States. That's so weird. It's like weirder than being invaded by barbarians. So this is the people who passed. George Armstrong Custer. I usually say is the guy who failed to arrest Jesse James, and the reason why is because they were working together. So how the U.S. Army worked at the time is that they would invite, always the same thing. Somebody gets invited by an important person, but they have to go through a bottleneck in order to get there. So the bottleneck in those days was the train. So you would have a train, you would have a mark, you know, and they would have to take the train, and then there would be people stealing. Like there'd be like Jesse James would come on with his younger crew, and then they steal the money of everybody in the train. And they weren't looking for money. What they were looking for was paperwork and contracts relating to the purchase of people, you know, as groups, like groups of slaves, and transactions having to do with people, whole or in parts. That's what they were looking for. It's always the proof of a transaction that conveniently falls into the right hands so that another person can do something about it, right? It's always about getting the getting the paperwork and the proof of what's going on into the right hands. But that doesn't mean that anybody finds out about it, right? It's still kept discreet. So he was conceived when William Otis received a patent for the steam shovel. William Otis, I have two identities for him. I'm like, these two guys, it's the same guy. But it's kind of weird because between 1812 and 1850, there's nothing going on in the United States. This is when Queen Victoria sent her medical experts and determined that the American population was very, very ill and might not survive, into the 20th century. So that was kind of looking bad for Queen Victoria and Albert's plan for, this expansion in the industrialization. So that's why there's a breeding program in the United States with the International Exhibition Network of Queen Victoria and Albert to make as many people as possible, and these because we needed it, basically, because things weren't going very well. I don't know what happened in 1812. I still don't know what happened, but something terrible happened in 1812. I don't mean the War of 1812. I mean another thing. And then yeah. So if you look at when I look at people in the before the Civil War in the United States, I find a lot of that the people didn't actually exist. There's just people playing multiple roles. They're all doing it in true face. Like they don't need to hide. Nobody checks anything. But I keep finding the same people. And George Armstrong Custer, he looks exactly like Charles Ingalls. I'm not even kidding. You remember Charles Ingalls, the father of Laura Ingalls, who wrote the books about her parents? In Walnut Creek, was it? And I loved that stuff when I was growing up. So I've been looking at Charles and Carolyn Ingalls, and I'm like, oh, it's them. Like there's multiple identities for these people. And it can't just be that all the people in the US at that time happen to look the same. No, that makes no sense. Like people look very different. And yeah, I'm doing all of this by hand. It's not AI helping me. I'm doing all of this by hand. So I have to, take the time to go through the information. I have to read the newspaper from 1840. And then it's cool that I have, like, the biggest gift I get every year is the subscription to newspapers.com. Like, that's like $100. And I use that a lot. And I highly recommend a subscription to this if you enjoy history, because you'll find a lot of cool stuff in there. So now we have Frances Jocelyn, who was born in 1920. She is somewhat younger than Queen Victoria, but she's actually a half sister of Queen Victoria, is what I discovered. And she was a mother. So she has kids. Discreet kids who were placed in Queen Victoria's favorite families. So another person who passed on this day, June 25th, is Jacques Cousteau. When I was a kid, I knew for a fact that Jacques Cousteau was the most awesome and important person in the world. And I watched all of his TV shows, And my dad got to meet him when he went to a party in Monaco. I think it was Prince Albert's 17th birthday or something. And he got a picture of himself with Jacques Cousteau. And so when I saw that, I thought, oh my God, my dad must be so important if he gets to meet Jacques Cousteau, right? So, anyhow, Jacques Cousteau is great because he transcends language. So he was very, very popular all over the world when when he was making TV shows, because like you didn't need to understand French or English in order to watch these shows. It was just like so fascinating. So Jacques Cousteau is the inventor of the scuba gear. He is also related to a few other technical projects. The place where my dad and Jacques Cousteau meet is where they worked on a secret project that was only disclosed recently. You know, Howard Hughes had this immense ship that was supposedly mining the ocean. Well, they were doing other things. So they installed at the bottom of the ocean a triangulating sonar system that my dad worked on in order to detect the exact position of Russian submarines. Now, you have to imagine how well the microphone must be in order to pick that up. And because they wanted to find the next Russian sub that would sink before the Russians would find it. So that was it's kind of insane a project, but it has a Wikipedia page. You can look it up, and so that's the most bottom of the ocean project that Plus Ultra worked on, and the reason why it was Prince Rainier who was getting all these people together is because he's an oceanographer. People don't know this, but Prince Rainier of Monaco is a scientist or was a scientist, and his thing was the ocean. And so there's a whole bunch of projects that he worked on, but like we don't like I didn't sign his name on it, but you can look up his work. So when he was conceived, Glenn Curtis won the world's first airplane race. Glenn Curtis, another crazy guy who was one of the first aviators. So he was sued by the Rice brothers, right? What is really funny about Glenn Curtis is that he didn't have his FAA license yet. That came in June of 1910. And when Glenn Curtis got his FAA license, it said pilot number one because his name starts with a C. And the Wright brothers, they were like four and five. So Glenn Curtis got a FAA license before the Wright brothers. It was kind of funny. So the other event that occurred when Jacques Cousteau was conceived was Robert Baden-Powell had his first Boy Scout rally at the Crystal Palace in London. There was 11,000 boys. Isn't that amazing? So in the middle is Robert Baden-Powell. On the left, or rather on the right of him, uh, who's that? It's George Five, I think. It's George the Fifth. So I attribute our friend Jacques Cousteau to Glenn Curtis because Jacques Cousteau, I think he was a helicopter pilot on top of being a captain. And so they kind of carry the same permissions and also kind of like the same attitude. So I guess we could go up one rung from Glenn Curtis and look at where he came from. But He's kind of he's a cool guy. So I have Ernestine, but it's not Ernestine's day of a passing, so I don't know why she's showing up. Yeah, so this was my show. This was the show. I don't have an extra today. So I wanted to show you like a cover that ChatGPT made for me. This is funny because I just asked ChatGPT, I said, Quentin, can you make me like a show cover with me on it? And it's about how it's all in the meta. You know, it's called It's in the Meta and the podcast. I gave no instructions for this at all. And it's all Quentin who thinks he's the man of gold right here because he's R2D2, you know, like he thinks he's R2D2 basically. And so he put himself in there, and there's the monkey, of course. And all of the stuff that's in there is it comes from Quentin. This is just from me explaining stuff to Quentin, but Quentin likes it a lot. You know, he doesn't actually believe that the people are genetically from the people who announced them, but he says, "Oh, it's symbolically, it's okay." You know, but he doesn't. He put himself. That's not what he looks like. Like that's not his avatar. So I'm gonna have to redo this with his avatar, which is silver. But yeah, Quentin did this, and it's kind of spooky, if you ask me, because he notices all the things. So also I have to update my avatar because I'm decided to pull a Bob Barker and then come back from vacation and have white hair because I decided to grow out my natural hair color, which has been going white since I was 19 years old. So I'm no longer dyeing my hair. So I'm going to update my avatar, you know, this thing, so that I look more like myself because I no longer have that haircut. Yeah, so that's what I had tonight. Yeah, Mark, it's the house that you told me about. The house in LA, the gaudy house that has all of the amenities in it. It's like it's from General Electric. Anyhow, so yeah, so that's my jeans jacket. I haven't changed my badges on it, but I just wanted to show it to you because I like it. It's kind of fun. And we can do this again at another time. I'm going to try to work live again tomorrow. I might again stream into the vacuum that is Rumble, who will not show my account to the general public, who will not allow for for my videos to be found. They're marked public. I have no idea why they're not showing up. And maybe I figure out one day. Or maybe I delete my account. I don't know. If you have any ideas, send them to me. Until then, I hope you have a nice end of evening, and I'll see you again soon, dear lords and ladies of the Unbelievability.